That first day I was setting up and getting all my data transferred over, the phone did get really hot. I had mentioned that in my impressions video, and that continued to happen throughout the first few days of use. I would take it off the charger and it would be hot, or just randomly throughout the day, touching it, it was real toasty. It's been over probably 2 weeks since that's happened, so I don't think that's something you need to worry about. Now, the design. I did go with the natural titanium finish, and I still think this is the best looking model by far. It's essentially this year's version of silver. Online, I had initially thought I had a subtle hint to it, but in person, it's just pure gray. I love it though, and think it looks gorgeous. Now that I'm to the point with this titanium build that I'm used to it, I really like it. I personally think it looks nicer than the stainless steel models. The industrial look it has is just my kind of design taste. Now, the one downside is the phone does feel very slippery. The edges, and most especially the corners, have a very soft feel, so I find that a lot of time I'm holding the phone with 2 hands because I don't want to drop it. It doesn't feel fragile, but I've still felt the need to baby it. Now, I'm starting to feel like the standard Pro model might actually be too small for my hands, so next year I do plan on trying out the Pro Max alongside this one to see which I prefer. As much as I love this caseless look, I am going to throw a leather one on here. I just haven't taken the time to research it because Apple got rid of theirs, so if you guys do know of any good ones, let me know. The other thing about this titanium build is it does actually feel a lot lighter. That's because it is roughly around 20 grams compared to the 13 and 14, which isn't a massive improvement, but I have noticed it in day-to-day use. Because I did come from the 13 Pro, the slim bezels and dynamic island are actually what I've been noticing the most. I think how they use the cutout is pretty cool, but in direct sunlight it does look stupid. The camera is another reason I wish I could have checked out the Pro Max. With it, the 5x lens was introduced, but on the base Pro model, there doesn't seem to be any improvements. It's the same exact sensors with the same apertures and megapixel counts. The few changes that were made on both are all within the software. The biggest in my opinion is with the ProRes log format. This allows you to take incredibly high quality videos on the iPhone and have a ton of flexibility in post-production. Colors are significantly more vibrant, and the footage itself just looks beautiful. It won't be ready to watch straight out of the camera. You're gonna have to take it into some other software like DaVinci Resolve to make it look right. My Sony camera doesn't even shoot in log, so it took me a good 10 to 15 minutes until I had it looking how I wanted. Also, note that it does take up a ton of storage. A minute of 4K 30 video in log is 5.5 gigabytes. So depending on how much storage you have, that might only be enough for a few minutes of video. Now that we have USB-C, you can take an external SSD or SD card and record straight to that. The other change is that you can set the phone's camera to shoot in 3 different focal lengths: 24, 28, and 35 millimeters. While these aren't the actual focal lengths, it's all done digitally, this can be a quick way to get a specific framing for your shot. Now, full honesty, I don't really take advantage of the iPhone's camera, so I cannot do it enough justice. Proper mirrorless cameras are always going to have their place, at least for now, but knowing you have such a good camera in your pocket is fantastic. So in the last month, battery life, probably as expected, has been good. I've had no issues with it lasting my entire day. By the time I go to bed, it's sitting somewhere around 10 to 20%. Sometimes though even higher. That is of course going to depend on how much you use your phone, but for me, I have a few hours of on-screen time, and then the majority of the day is just Spotify or audiobooks in the background. Charging up with USB-C has been so convenient because oftentimes I'll forget to charge overnight, but I can just use the cable that I have in my bag and plug that into my MacBook. The action button is a useful tool, but I honestly haven't been using it as much as I thought I would. I've had it set to a dedicated tweet button, which really just means I'm going into Control Center a lot more when I need to silence my phone. While in the process of making this video though, I've actually switched it over to making a new note. I constantly have ideas throughout the day, but if I don't write them down immediately, I forget them. So having this is just so convenient. Both of these actions can be achieved by creating a shortcut in the Shortcuts app and then selecting it in the action button settings. I've already hinted towards it throughout the video, but USB-C really is that main feature, if I can even call it that makes this phone somewhat worth the upgrade. First world problems for sure, but my tech carry is now significantly simplified, only having to carry a single cable. One funny thing that you can now do is connect the phone up to an external monitor. You have been able to do this before, but now it's just easier than ever. With the A17 Pro chip, Apple's been hyping it up for its gaming capabilities, and while I don't consider myself a mobile gamer by any means, it is kind of cool that you can use it as sort of your own gaming console. Using my Razer Thunderbolt 4 dock, I can connect it up to my ultra-wide monitor and then get a DualSense and connect it. Given the iPhone's resolution, it fills up the ultra-wide screen pretty nicely. I'm still waiting for Mirage to drop on here. That'll be a lot of fun to test out, so I'm hoping that for my 6-month review, that'll be here. The iPhone 15 Pro brings a nice set of quality of life improvements. This is nowhere near a leap, very much an incremental upgrade, but I do think USB-C is going to be that main driver for a lot of people. The way I see it, iPhones are really meant to be upgraded every like 2 to 3 years. That seems to be the sweet spot. The trend I've noticed is that this is the time interval in which we either get a pretty significant design change or just enough of those small tiny changes stacked up that it makes for a meaningful upgrade. Some people are saying that this is a huge upgrade from the 13 Pro, but for the average user, I still don't actually think it's that big. I am hoping that with the 16 lineup, we'll see some larger changes. So that wraps it up. Let me know what you think of this phone down below. Really appreciate you for watching, but I'll see you next week. Take care.
And the best year for iPhones ever. The curved edges and the obviously amazing titanium frame makes the phone feel so much premium and lighter. Also, I feel more comfortable holding the phone without a case, which is a first for me. Coming from an iPhone 14 Pro, I always use case. The phone was a little bit too big for me. The iPhone 15 feels so much more comfortable and I feel more confident handling it with one hand. The battery was another concern of mine coming from the 14 Pro Max, thinking that the 15 Pro wouldn't be enough for my daily usage, which is kind of true, but not as bad as I thought. The phone works incredibly well. For my usage, I do not game as much on my phone anymore. I do play every now and then in downtime or when I'm traveling, but because I use my phone mostly for social media, for Twitter, YouTube, and all those stuff, my phone lasts me sometimes around 5 p.m. or so. So when I come home from work, I like to connect to the charger before I go to the gym and continue with my day. But if you are a light user like me and you want to give it a shot, I highly suggest you to try the 15 Pro instead of the 15 Pro Max. I feel like the perfect size has always been the iPhone 15 Pro. The A17 Pro is an amazing chip, no doubt. But at this point, can we really test how good it is? For the average user, you're never gonna get the phone to that level of performance unless you play AAA games such as Resident Evil Village. I think that the A17 Pro has a lot of potential and this is just a start of something great. And now we're gonna talk about the overheating issues. Since day one, I haven't experienced any. I feel like for some reason, it was something more common for the iPhone 15 Pro Max, which doesn't really make a lot of sense, but on X, I was seeing a lot of people with the same issue and it was only the 15 Pro Max. It was very strange. My phone never had any issue. I saw more people with the same phone as me and they didn't experience any. So it's a little odd, but luckily Apple already took care of that. So it's nothing to worry about anymore. Now the best part of the iPhone 15 Pro and the reason why I think that you should get it is the camera. This is Apple's most advanced camera system to date with the addition of HDR5 that captures a more color accurate image with better skin tones and true to life colors. This feature is particularly more noticeable when you take images of objects that have a background that is a lot lighter than they are. And on the iPhone 14 Pro, I don't know if you guys remember, when you tried to do something like that, the background was overblown and overexposed, limiting the field of view of an object with a brighter background. Now with the introduction of this HDR5, we're able to finally see beyond the darker objects. Thank you, Apple. Photos also now default to 24 megapixels, which means you're getting more detail with still a reasonable file size. And along with that, on the 15 Pro Max, you get the amazing 5x telephoto lens. That's the only reason why I may have considered getting the 15 Pro Max. The action button for me, I do use it, but not as much as I thought I was gonna do it. My action button is default to my camera. The action button is great, but I don't really use it as much. There's a lot of functionalities you can add to it. Maybe if they add a double tap, a triple tap to add different features in the future, but as of now, it's just okay. Will I recommend someone to switch to the iPhone 15 Pro or 15 Pro Max? I would say it's the phone to switch. If you're coming from a 14 Pro Max or a 14 Pro, if you have the money to do so, you should do it. It's an incredible phone, you're not gonna regret it. But the difference is not huge unless you're a lot into tech and you'll be able to tell those small little things and you can appreciate the upgrades. The upgrade will make a lot more sense if you're coming from an iPhone 13 Pro and below, in my opinion. iOS is very stable, at least in my experience. So I don't think that switching is necessary to do it every single year. But if you have the money to do so, as I said before, and you want it, and you are gonna take advantage of those features, you know, go for it. If you enjoyed this video and you find it informative and helpful, let me know in the comment section below and let me know what do you want to see in the future. I will try to work in this channel a little bit more to bring a little bit more tech and see what other items I can review for you guys. I hope you enjoy and see you in the next one. See ya.
Apple's iPhone 15 Pro in some ways is an absolutely monumental release. It's the first time a 3nm chip has ever shipped in a device, and it's only the second time Apple has ever changed the charging port on the iPhone. That might have been a long time coming, but we finally got a USB-C port on the iPhone, one that can actually do a lot of cool stuff. But in spite of that, I can't help but feel that Apple has kind of lost their way a little bit when it comes down to what really matters to the end user. Yes, they've made some big upgrades to this iteration of the iPhone, but they still have a long way to go in other areas. I'll get to what I mean by that a little bit later in the video, but first, let's talk about what's new. One of the first things you'll notice about the iPhone 15 Pro is that there's now a third button on the left-hand side of the phone. Gone is the beloved mute switch, but I think most people are going to be very happy with what's replacing it. This is Apple's new action button, and out of all of the changes on all the iPhones of recent years, this might be one of the most un-Apple things that they've done. It's a button that you can set to do pretty much anything you want. It's fully remappable to one of 8 different options, and it's even got its own dedicated UI that also doesn't look like something Apple would make. To be perfectly clear here, I'm not trash talking it. I absolutely love it, and I wish Apple did more of this. It's just surprising that Apple would even allow you to use shortcuts and therefore remap this side button to do just about anything, including opening third-party apps. I'm pretty boring though. I just have mine set to open the camera app after a long press of the action button. The display of the 15 Pro has also been slightly updated this year with some slimmer bezels. The difference is very obvious when you put the 15 Pro and the 15 side by side. It's not a big upgrade, but it's a pleasant one. The display itself is still the best in the biz, even if it hasn't been upgraded on the tech side of things. It's a roughly 1440p display running at 120Hz, and it's their Super Retina XDR OLED tech, so colors and contrast look fantastic. The cameras on the Pro have also gotten a slight upgrade this year. Now, it doesn't get the huge 5x Tetra Prism telephoto that the Pro Max gets, but there's still some goodies for the regular Pro model too. It's got a larger sensor for that 48 megapixel main camera, and unsurprisingly, photos taken with it look excellent. I can't say that I've noticed a huge difference between this and the 14 Pro's main camera, but there is a bit of a difference in sharpness because photos now default to a 24 megapixel output instead of a 12 megapixel one. I've always been impressed with video on the iPhone, and this year is no different. Some of these shots are so steady that they look like they've been shot on a gimbal, even though I was just walking through holding the phone in my hands. Even the video from the much smaller 12 megapixel front-facing camera looks really, really good. And none of the footage you're seeing right now was shot using one of Apple's highest video quality codecs that these phones can shoot, ProRes. Like last year, these Pro phones can still shoot ProRes, but there are some upgrades there too. First of all, we can now shoot in ProRes Log, a much flatter profile that allows us to get maximum dynamic range for color grading later. That is definitely a feature worthy of the Pro moniker that Apple likes to throw around these days. The other upgrade is that we can now record this 4K ProRes footage at up to 60 frames per second directly to an external SSD using that new USB-C port. That is huge if you've ever wanted to upgrade to a more pro-level workflow where you never have to worry about internal storage again. The USB-C port can be used for more than just charging or recording external video too. It also supports video output at up to 4K 60 FPS, and you can even plug in a keyboard or mouse to it. It seems like Apple didn't restrict the USB-C port nearly as much as some people were expecting. It does only transfer files at USB 3.0 speeds, but that is much, much faster than the 2.0 speeds of the Lightning port. And then there's the frame of the iPhone itself, which has undergone a little bit of a transformation from stainless steel on the 14 Pro to titanium on the 15 Pro. The side rails are less glossy and therefore less fingerprinty, and it's more comfortable to hold because they've even rounded the edges a slight bit more this year. Not to mention that the phone is lighter because titanium is lighter than steel. Still though, despite how strong titanium is, the front and back of the phone is still made of glass, and as Jerry Rig Everything says, glass is glass and glass breaks. Therefore, you might want to pick up a case from the sponsor of this video, Rhino Shield. Rhino Shield is known for making super durable and customizable cases. I've used them for years, and they are perfect for protecting your new iPhone against drops while making them more stylish at the same time. They've sent me a bunch of new cases for the iPhone 15 Pro, and they all look awesome on it. Many of these cases are MagSafe compatible, and they actually have 2 times the pull force of Apple's official MagSafe product. It takes a bit of force to remove the phone and the case from a MagSafe charger. The solid suit case comes in 9 new colors this year for a total of 16 colors. Since Apple rounded the edges of their phones, Solid Suit has also evolved with rounded edges and a slightly curved back for the best grip yet. And if you're worried about the screen, you can also add their 3D impact screen protector for 360 degrees of protection. If you like clear cases but you're worried about them yellowing over time, don't be. They come with 5 years of warranty against yellowing or discoloration, and all of these cases are very easy to clean. There's endless customization too. They have thousands of print designs on their website, along with camera rings, buttons, new colors, etc. Even if you're not buying a new phone, you can still get a new look for your current phone on Rhino Shield's website. Use my link in the video description below and use code MARK10 to get 10% off of your order today. Okay, so remember at the beginning of the video when I said that Apple has sort of lost their way a little bit when it comes to what really matters to the end user? That all starts with the new chip inside, the A17 Pro. This is the very first 3nm chip to ever ship in a device, and don't get me wrong, that's a huge technical achievement. Apple claims that the CPU is 10% faster than last year, and it has a 20% faster GPU capable of ray tracing at higher frame rates, and they even showed off some demos of some full console games like Resident Evil Village running on the iPhone 15 Pro. But Apple, I have to ask, why? Look, it's no secret that Apple makes some of the most powerful and power-efficient chips in the smartphone world, and it's been that way for a long time. But to continue to push the envelope this hard when there are other arguably more important parts of your device that are falling behind is a bit of an oversight in my opinion. For example, let's talk about the battery life. The iPhone 15 Pro comes with a battery capacity of just under 3,300 milliamp hours. That is less than the regular iPhone 15, by the way. For a phone with a very powerful chip and a 120Hz display, it'll come as no surprise to many of you that the battery life has not been good. I subjected it to the exact same battery life test that I use on all of my Tech Rewind reviews, and it ended up with just 32% battery remaining. For reference, the iPhone 12 mini, a now 3-year-old phone with a much smaller battery inside of it, finished that same test with 25% remaining, only 7% lower than the 15 Pro. There have been several days where I've had to top up my phone with a charge before the day was over, and I'm not even what I'd consider a power user. You could say, but Mark, it's a 6.1-inch phone. It's too small to have a bigger battery. Well, to that, I say take a closer look at the Samsung S23 or the Asus Zenfone 10. Both phones are almost identical to the 15 Pro in size, and yet they have 3,900 and 4,300 milliamp hour batteries respectively. And battery life is not the only area where progress has, for lack of a better word, stagnated. Despite this brand new USB-C port, charging speed has stayed the same as it was last year on the Lightning iPhones. The iPhone 15 Pro tops out at around 25 watts of charging at the very peak of its curve, even though most of the time it's averaging between 15 and 20 watts. Other manufacturers are reaching much higher speeds than that. To Apple's credit, the continuous drive towards faster and faster phone hardware has led to some great benefits over time. I mean, if you pick up any iPhone from the past 3 or 4 years, I can almost guarantee that it's gonna feel just as fast for everyday tasks as the modern iPhones. But I feel like we've kind of reached the point where the effort involved in designing faster hardware doesn't really translate to a better end user experience, you know what I mean? I would 100% rather have a phone with an all-day battery life over one that can spit out blisteringly high Geekbench 6 numbers, but hey, maybe I'm crazy. Let me know what you think in a comment below. If I'm being honest, I think I'm probably gonna return the iPhone 15 Pro. I mean, as cool as some of the upgrades are, I can't stick with a phone that doesn't get me through a full day of usage. And if you've got $1,000 in your pocket, I think you'd be better off saving some of that money and picking up an iPhone 15 Plus, or even a used iPhone 14 Pro Max if the USB-C port isn't a big deal to you. At least then you wouldn't have to worry about the bad battery life. Hope you liked the video. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a great day.